30 Years War, Danish Intervention, 1626 to
It was late
1629.
1620. The Bohemians and their allies had been ruthlessly crushed by a Catholic army, Spanish troops were marching on the Palatinate, and the Protestant Union was in disarray. The rebel defeat at the Battle of White Mountain was catastrophic for their cause, but Ferdinand still had problems to deal with. Though Frederick V had been defeated and his military forces smashed, he had not renounced his claim to the Bohemian throne, leaving Ferdinand with the task of eradicating his support without provoking a general European war. Welcome to our second video on the 30 Years' War and the Danish Intervention. The sponsor of this video, Raid Shadow Legends, will take you to the world.
Not Raid Shadow Legends, bro. Not Raid Shadow Legends, bro.
And start playing.
Not Raid Shadow Legends,
After his army's
bro.
defeat at White Mountain, Frederick V first fled to Breslau and then to the Netherlands. Even though he had lost militarily, the Palatinate's ruler could still count on Protestant allies. The defending generals.
Holy, I didn't even realize 30 Years War freaking happened like right when the Caribbean was like now being like colonized by other European powers, like not just the Spanish. Like what the heck, 1624? Oh, freaking hell, dude. Like I always thought that Europe at this time was quiet, like for colonization to be happening around the New World. I thought Europe was kind of quiet. But little did I know that it would be engaging in one of its most deadliest war ever. What the
Georg
heck?
Friedrich of Baden and Christian of Brunswick could not coordinate their armies properly, so they were defeated piecemeal by Thiel in the battles of Wimpfel and Hochst in May and June of 1622. Ernst von Mansfeld retreated to the Netherlands, abandoning the Palatinate, which was then gifted to Maximilian of Bavaria, along with its accompanying position as Elector. In 1623, Christian, who wished to invade Bohemia and unify with Bethlen-Gabor, who was once again at war with the Emperor, advanced from the Netherlands with 21,000 men. He was forced into battle by Thiel and crushed at the Battle of Stadtlohn by 30,000 Catholic soldiers. After this battle, the war seemed to be concluded. However, the balance of power had been so disrupted that an external escalation of the conflict was now inevitable. To the north, the Kingdom of Denmark-Norway was still one of the most powerful states in Europe in 1625. The realm was not populous or traditionally wealthy in material, but had total control of the sea lanes connecting the Baltic and North Seas. Danish kings could levy taxes on this shipping, which provided a lucrative and reliable income. In the early 17th century, rulers of Denmark-Norway had several key goals. One was the pursuit of expansionist dynastic aspirations in northern Germany, and the other was the protection of the country and its Baltic hegemony from the rising power of Sweden to their eastern border. To this end,
Crazy. Crazy. It's like, why don't Scandinavia just all unite into one country? Actually, I think that actually did happen at one point. I think like the Kalmar Union. Yeah, that didn't happen. Didn't really work out. That's crazy, bro. It's insane to me how like freaking all these countries here, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, hell, even actually these people are all the same. And I'm also talking about Germany as well. Like these people, like Germans are literally just Southern Scandinavians. Like you're literally Southern Scandinavians. We only call them Germans because that's just a terminology that the Romans just gave them. But remove that terminology that the Romans gave them, man. Like Germans are literally just Southern Scandinavians. Because all Germanic people literally started from Denmark and southern Sweden, so basically just southern, like all of these people, Netherlands, like, and yet they're also politically different. That's crazy how that works though. Like how can you just go from just like all being the same to just being quote unquote just different? Ugh. Well, there's a wonderful quote actually. I think this is from like one of the founding fathers of America. Like history isn't remembered; it's simply agreed upon, and that's so true. Like it's so facts, bro. Like I'm sure that statement alone that I just said is going to just have people typing in the comments, even though it's literally true. Because again, people like to distort history so much and agree on stuff that only fits their narrative.
The two Scandinavian states had fought between 1563 and 1570 in the Northern Seven Years' War, and from 1611 to 1613 in the Kalmar War. The ruling dynasty of Denmark-Norway, members of the House of Oldenburg, had North German roots, and its heads considered themselves to be both kings of Denmark and German princes, as they held the Duchy of Holstein within the empire. In 1588, Christian IV ascended to the Danish throne. He used his boundless energy to make Denmark wealthy and powerful. Many of his ventures failed, but he could afford to experiment due to his massive personal fortune, being probably the wealthiest monarch in early 17th century Europe.
That's it. Wow.
This ambitious monarch was initially hesitant to become involved in the unfolding German conflict, but the spread of war attracted his concern. To Christian, the actions of Ferdinand II signalled that the Austrian Habsburgs were willing to trample German liberties and increase imperial authority. At the same time, the Dutch, whose truce with Spain had just ended, attempted to enmesh him into the Protestant cause. Christian IV also wished this suited Ferdinand perfectly, as the emperor wanted to regain a personal leading role in the war. The campaign began in early 1626, during which Christian concentrated his main army of 20,000 at Wolfenbüttel so that he could keep the two armies of Wallenstein and Thiel divided. The former had occupied the cities of Magdeburg and Halberstadt due to the necessity of feeding and paying the army. It is key to note that in this period, armies employed the savage principle of bellum se ipsum alit, meaning that the armies fed and funded themselves at the expense of the local population in conquered territory. Moving from his base, Wallenstein initially began operations around Goslar, but turned when he received reports that Mansfeld was advancing south along the Elbe, announcing he was coming to liberate Magdeburg. He advanced towards Dessau, where one of Wallenstein's subordinates guarded the only permanent bridge in the region, a key imperial supply route which had to be protected.
Okay, I want to say something real quick, right? Um, so you see how this is all like German states fighting each other, right? Um, I find it like, how do I explain this, right? Like, it just like these people knew, like Germans knew that they were all German, right? But it's like they all willfully fought each other, but they still knew that they were German. They still called themselves German. And it's like, what would qualify as someone being different would be my question. Not even question. Like that's just like so up in the air, to be honest. It's like there's so many cases where you have similar situations like this, i.e. Russia and Ukraine, or like the freaking the Slavs in the Balkans, or even the Scandinavians, who are literally also the same exact people as the German or English people, right? And it's like, what would, because dude, just because they all view themselves as German doesn't mean like they all, like a lot of these German states had a lot of distinct things about themselves. A good example of that would be Bavaria. Even now today, you can't, like, Germans cannot understand Bavarians when they speak. So it's like, wouldn't that mean that Bavarian people are like their own thing, but yet everyone agrees that they're German? It's like, dude, oh my gosh, man, like, just think about that for a second. And I say think about this because this will be extremely relevant in future videos on discussions I'm going to talk about.
On the 24th of April 1626, the Imperial Army arrived in the region. After waiting until Mansfeld's attempts to cross the bridge had faltered, Wallenstein counterattacked and routed his enemy at the Battle of Dessau Bridge. Through all this, Christian IV had remained at Wolfenbüttel, attempting to gain additional German support.
Holy,
Meanwhile,
1626, Poland was the dominant force in Europe. Well, the largest country in Europe. We have Denmark, Norway, and we have the 30 Years' War going on. 1 year after my country was settled and by the English, right? At this point, it was just a small settlement colony. Dude, that's insane to think about. That is actually wild to think about. Like, I never realized, like, just like in like how old, low key, how old like my country actually is. Like, holy freaking, like, I'm literally like trying to like just process that in my head, dude, because things are so different now. Freaking 2025, this is like the 400th year. Oh yeah, we're in 2025, 400-year anniversary. Damn, that's madness, dude. Freaking madness, dude. All whilst all this was going on. And you want to know something that I want to point out here as well? Do you like notice how like England isn't really like relevant yet? Not as powerful, right? This wasn't really England's peak yet, right? This is more like Dutch peak, Denmark, Norway peak, Poland's peak, that type of stuff, right? Hell, even France. like England wasn't really like, like on that level yet, right? Again, and I'm saying this because, and I will always say this, okay? Like Barbados was like the stepping stone for the British Empire to take shape. Okay, it was the stepping stone, due to the immense money that it would eventually come to generate. At this point, the English didn't know how valuable the island was yet. No, that would come decades later. But when they realized it, it would generate a lot of money, a lot of money. Okay, that is a fact. The Without Barbados, England, like, sure, the British Empire would have probably like taken shape, but like any European colonial empire, duh. But the amount of money that it really like gave for England to keep keep going with its eventual British Empire, yeah, that was kind of low-key vital. I wouldn't even say low-key vital. It pretty much was vital. It's a shame that historians, like mainstream historians, never really point that out. And before you type in my comments, oh, that's not true, because I had someone look at me and tell me, oh, that's not true. You can literally just Google this yourself. I'm not even kidding. One Google search. Like, this is one Google search. Okay. One simple Google search. Like, I would not say this like out my butt. I would not. I would not say that out my butt. Trust me. I would not. But again, I'm saying that because notice how England didn't really like have that power yet, right? Don't get me wrong, India would eventually come to surpass any and everything. Don't get me wrong. I mean, yeah, I know that. But, before India, there was a Caribbean. And really and truly, without that Caribbean wealth, it would have been harder for England to colonize India. You can quote me on what I said. So let us continue.
While the newly recovered Mansfeld rushed east and then south through Silesia, aiming to get to Upper Hungary and rendezvous with Gabor. Not wanting to infringe on Brandenburg's neutrality, Wallenstein initially held off from pursuing the Protestant commander, but after a while he set off with 20,000 men, aiming to catch up with Mansfeld. It is possible that Wallenstein had waited deliberately until Mansfeld had gone too far to turn back. At the same time, Thiel had systematically captured and razed the strongholds at Munden, Northeim and Göttingen, with massacre and plunder occurring throughout the entire campaign. Christian IV raced south in order to attempt a relief, but was too late. Realizing he was now being chased by the Catholic League army, he retreated to the north, attempting to get back to Wolfenbüttel, but was harried by the enemy forces all the way.
For a second, I thought that was Ku Klux Klan uniform there.
The baggage train to increase his army's speed, and
I'm not even kidding.
Was forced to deploy on August 27th when Thiel caught up near Luther am Barenberger.
Is that battering rams? What
Both
is that?
armies numbered around 20,000 and formed up with the Hummica stream between them, with the Danish using it as a defensive obstacle. The Danes had a few more cannons than Thiel, but made bad use of them.
Okay.
The 22 guns fired at one time, whereas the Catholic League guns were used much more effectively, shooting bloody holes into the enemy ranks.
Ay, I can only imagine, bro. Oof.
After softening the Danish force up, the League co-commander, Anhalt, opened the battle by crossing the stream and advancing with his tercios under artillery cover, eventually managing to gain a foothold on the other side. At the same time, contingents of Imperial Cuirassier, Harquebusier and Dragoon cavalry were dispatched around each wing,
yes,
and
the
crashed
classic.
into the Danes in a double envelopment.
The classic.
Thiel's centre now crossed the stream and managed to seize all the Danish artillery, as well as much of the baggage train. To the southeast, Wallenstein confronted Mansfeld and Gabor on the frontier, but this imperial show of force was enough to make the Ottoman-supported Hungarians seek peace. Seeing there was no hope, Mansfeld tried to escape, but died of disease in the Balkans. Back in Saxony, Thiel's forces now besieged Wolfenbüttel and Nienburg on the Weser. Having made his way back north after his triumph, Wallenstein joined Thiel just north of Lauenburg in September, and together the two overran Holstein and forced the Danes to retreat. As a reward for his service, Wallenstein was made Duke of Mecklenburg, an act which was controversial even to fellow Catholics.
1628.
The Duke wanted another base for his burgeoning fleet, and was convinced to cast his gaze onto the Hanseatic city of Stralsund, a town famous for defying ducal authority. In early May 1628, one of Wallenstein's subordinates, Hans-Georg von Arnim, was commanded to put Stralsund under siege. Initially, he did not wish to damage imperial prestige by using such force, so he only loosely blockaded the city. Inside the walls, wealthier aristocrats generally favoured compromise, whereas poorer citizens, led by Justinus von Gosen, would rather resist, as they would likely suffer the most under any occupation by Wallenstein's mercenary army. As the first imperial assaults began, Stralsund had 20,000 inhabitants and was defended by a citizen force of 2,500, a levy of 1,500, and a further 1,000 mercenaries recruited the previous winter. Arnim now demanded the surrender of the city. In order to add more weight to imperial demands, he seized the island of Danholm just off the eastern edge of the harbour, and this managed to put cannons in range of the city. However, Arnim had no fleet and could not resupply his force. The relatively small Stralsund navy managed to blockade the trapped Imperials on the island until it surrendered on the 15th of April, depriving their forces of a few cannons. Over the next month, 6,000 reinforcements arrived at the Imperial siege lines, which prompted Arnim to command a night assault, but this was repelled relatively easily and the attackers retreated. Seeing the initial success of the defenders, Christian IV, who had retreated into Denmark, sent 1,000 Scots and Germans to assist the town under the command of Heinrich Hulk. After a few more small-scale repulsed attacks on the 26th and 27th of May, Arnim resorted to repeated massive artillery bombardments as he waited for Wallenstein to arrive. 600 more reinforcements arrived on June 20th under the Swedish flag. 3 days later, the town concluded a 20-year-long alliance with the King of Sweden, Gustavus Adolphus, who then chose to garrison the town. This was the beginning of Sweden's intervention in the 30 Years' War. The siege intensified on June...
Wasn't Sweden's intervention in the 30 Years' War relatively short, though?
27th,
if I remember correctly.
Arrived in person. He took command of the imperial forces from Arnim and renewed the assaults with a great intensity. In these attacks, the Scottish forces were defending the key eastern district of Franken under the command of Robert Monroe. While they distinguished themselves and managed to repulse the attackers, 500 of the 900 Scots were killed and a further 300 were wounded, including Monroe himself.
Dude, that's like the entire, 90% of the entire Scotsmen were casualties. Holy crap, man. Oh my goodness. That's even more mad because I have Scottish DNA in me as well. Oh my goodness.
During the following night, Wallenstein succeeded in taking the outer fortifications of the city, but could not progress any further. Instead, he again resorted to mass bombardments with his heavy guns. On the following morning, the Duke of Pomerania, Bogisław XIV, sent envoys to urge Stralsund to surrender, but they refused.
Yeah, they're kind of holding pretty
June
good
30th,
though.
More Swedish vessels arrived and reinforced the defenders with a further 600 soldiers, whilst under heavy fire from the imperial cannons, which were now wary of any ships approaching. The situation began to change on the 17th of July when Alexander Leslie arrived with 1,100 more Scots. He almost immediately sallied out of the defences and launched an audacious attack on the siege lines, inflicting many losses. The next week was decisive. Inclement weather, in the form of heavy rainfall between the 21st and 22nd.
I thought he was about to ruin everything. Never mind. Never mind.
Turned the battlefield into a sea of mud, making the attackers' situation untenable. Finally, on the 4th of August, Wallenstein lifted the siege. For the first time in the 30 Years' War, Albrecht von Wallenstein had been defeated. Christian IV wished to capitalize on the Protestant success at Stralsund and again began to raise an army on the island of Usedom. On the 11th of August 1628, Christian marched to Wolgast and captured it, meeting no resistance from the imperial garrison. The Danish king was then met with overwhelming support from the local population to turn Wolgast into a fortress like Stralsund. He then awaited Wallenstein for the final battle. The imperial commander had withdrawn from Stralsund after his defeat and headed east to face the new Danish force in the field with 7,000 troops, consisting of 33 infantry companies, 20 cuirassier companies, and 11 cannon.
That's not really a lot of men.
The Danish army had 6,000 soldiers,
that's not...
including 1,000 fighters.
That's not really a lot, to be honest. I mean, bro, for comparison of why that's not a lot, the Barbados Defense Force has like 1,000 men, and we have a population of like almost 300,000 people. Like a little below, like, well, 280,000 people with like 1,000 men in the defense force. That's, and Barbados is only like 21 miles long, so 167 square miles in total. That's why I said that's not really a lot. Is very generous and very trustful.
A decree which attempted to retroactively enforce the clause of Augsburg that Catholic lands were no longer to be held by Protestants. This was a bold enough act to cause many moderate Lutherans who had kept silent up until now, led by the Elector of Saxony, to become increasingly threatened. However, they were now on their own again until a new force would appear to once again intensify the 30 Years' War.
I've heard a lot about this guy.
Sweden, led by Gustavus Adolphus.
I am looking forward to see this guy.
We'll talk about it in the next video on the 30
This guy's like what, Swedish Napoleon or something?
War. So make sure you are subscribed to our channel and
yeah, I'm actually looking forward to see what this guy's capable of. Let's see how he compares to all these other people that I've learned about thus so far. Hannibal, Napoleon, Alexander the Great, Caesar. Who else did I learn about? There was more generals that were quite noteworthy. Can't come in my head right now. But yeah, you made it all the way here. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, man, definitely do tell me in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. And goodbye. Make sure you like and subscribe as well. Helps me a lot.